Peter Deming, cinematographer for The Good Lord Bird. An enslaved boy becomes a member of John Brown's family of abolitionist soldiers and finds himself in the 1859, raid at Harper's Ferry. Not 1959, Peter. But when you were first approached for this project, I guess, what were your initial ideas or thoughts about, like, what you wanted to accomplish visually?
Well, I think, anytime you enter into a time period, you want to make it authentic without being, have affectation or make it feel phony or something, just pasted on. So that was, Albert Hughes brought me into the project, and we had worked together a bunch of times. So we got right down to sort of, spouting out to each other what we thought the look should be and how we would achieve it. So that's sort of how it started. And, it's a point in time where photography is in its very early stages, and there's a lot of sort of still, documenting events through painting as well. So it was sort of a mixture of that and trying to be authentic, and be watchable at the same time.
So were there any initial beyond the specifics of photography, or even just other, I guess I would consider this maybe part of a Western genre, I guess, a little bit. Were there things that you kind of looked at or were using as touchstones for your initial conversations, maybe?
Well, we started looking at old photography, daguerreotypes, tintypes, things like that, and trying to figure out how we could work that in. Albert was set on shooting anamorphic, so we sort of started there, and then we started the hunt for some old optics. We clearly were going to shoot digital, so we wanted the optics to be, have some character and maybe even mimic some of the, the optical aberrations of early photography. And so we found some in a back room at Panavision. They had some B series anamorphics, which were the first series of anamorphics they made for shooting, and I didn't even really know they existed. I'd use C's and E's and all down the line, but the C's I thought were the oldest, but these were definitely in the vintage area. And so Albert sort of went crazy when we found those, and then they actually came up with some other older lenses. We had 3 Pathé, some French anamorphics that they had bought off of MGM, and then a couple of what they call portrait primes, which are also anamorphic, but they're sort of effects lenses. I mean, the center is sharp, but everything else is just completely whacked out. And so we use those in the show. We do a lot of what we call slave portraits, both of people who are slaves at the time or were slaves and now live in the North. And also, anytime we had a sort of emotional, thing we wanted to punch up, and we could compose it in such a way that, the person we wanted to be in focus would be in focus, then we used them for that as well.
Can you talk a little about, mentioned daguerreotype and all the different the visuals? Can you talk about the the way you thought of color, or the lack of color, I guess, in the show, and how you kind of visually represented that?
Yeah, I mean, well, daguerreotypes, tintypes are essentially black and white, and we knew how that conversation would go. So we would have loved it, but so we went down a path of desaturation, and through testing and both in the hair and makeup world and out on location, we sort of settled at about a 50% desaturation, which was what we shot the show with. Unfortunately, the show didn't go out with that, and that's sort of a byproduct of television post-production. But it was, I thought, very successful, and I've actually had people comment to me that they went back and watched some of the show and adjusted it themselves, and said that it really helped their viewing experience. So unfortunately, that's the way things turn out. But we built the show with that look all through, the dailies and everything.
So you mentioned like having worked with Albert before. I know. And then the show, I mean, he directed I think the first two episodes, and then maybe other directors did the later episodes. I guess can you talk
Right.
about it? But you did the whole show, I guess. So can you talk
Yes.
about like your responsibility then as like the cinematographer, having keeping the one style with the different filmmakers?
Yeah. I mean, we definitely had a manifesto of the visual manifesto, which Albert wrote. And one of the things that, I mean, Albert loves, Sergio Leone and all the old Westerns. And one of the things we decided was that we would only use camera dollies and cranes. There'd be no steady cam, no handheld, nothing that was sort of, post 50s, I guess. So I think that has a very subtle but effective, you know, impact on the viewing. Um, there certainly were places where we wished we could have used Steadicam or something like that. When you're out in the wilderness, it gets a little rough, but we powered through on that, and that was something that I had to sort of police along the way. And everyone was aware of the visual style, and there was no real question about whether we would continue to do it or not.
You mentioned like that the dolly shots and stuff. What was the most challenging one, or one you were most excited to pull off? I guess.
Probably the most challenging. There's a scene in well, it's now in the second half of episode 1 that we called Blackjack, which was this sort of battle out in the middle of this field, and it was high grass, and the ground under the grass was very uneven, and so we had to go out there. I think we laid about 100 feet of dolly track, and it was about 99 degrees with about 99% humidity, and it was and the shot was very stylized, where it started at 96 frames a second, and so we shot it at 96, and then at the end it ramps down to 24 to accommodate the dialogue, which starts right at the end of the shot. So, everyone's sort of humping and pushing the dolly as fast as they can, and people are running, and explosions are going off, and it was sort of very reassuring to watch it back and go, okay, this worked.
After all that effort, yeah, I can
Yeah.
imagine. So that is a really cool shot. We haven't even talked about like the performers, but Ethan Hawke obviously is great in the show. He's also like, I mean, he's so knowledgeable about film. He's a filmmaker himself. I get when you're working with someone like that as the actor or the lead actor on a project, does that make your job easier? Like, how do you like how does that help you? I guess.
Oh, it definitely makes your job easier. I mean, he knows, where the camera is, what's the lens. He knows what the size is automatically. If something goes wrong during your take, as soon as you cut, you say, Ethan, he goes, yeah, I know. He knows exactly what happened. So there's a lot of shorthand there that really saved time in shooting. And, that was really valuable.
Yeah. Peter Deming, cinematographer for The Good Lord Bird on Showtime. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. And stick around. We will do the group panel here shortly. Thank you.
Okay, great.